Happy Friday and hello everyone and welcome to the Tommy John studio in New York City. I am your host Charlie DiSturco and this is Green Dot Daily coming to you live every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. We've got a lot to get to on this Friday show. We'll get you ready for Football Sunday with Chris Raybon and Stuckey as they dish out their favorite bets ahead of week 8. I also step into the Sharp Tank looking to sell them on my 9th prop of the season. I am a sparkling 8-0, which Stuckey said he was needed before he would consider investing on me. More on that soon. It's also Game 1 of the World Series tonight between the Yankees and Dodgers. Sean Zerillo and I talk World Series MVP, other futures to hop in on, and more ahead of Friday's start. We'll also get UFC 308 picks with Sean before Mike Calabrese rounds us out with some college football. We've got a season-high 5 ranked matchups coming tomorrow with plenty of CFP hopes on the line. But we start in the NFL, where 2 divisions are currently up in flux in the NFC. The Commanders are currently in first of the NFC East, but an injury to Jaden Daniels has put their odds in flux. The Eagles are the favorites right now at plus 110. Meanwhile, the West is as close as ever. Seattle is the number 1 at 4-3, while the Cardinals, 49ers, and Rams are all 1 game back. San Francisco remains the favorite despite losing Brandon Ayuk for the season. They're plus 150, with the other 3 teams all 300 or longer, as we welcome in Stuckey and Chris Raybon now to talk more about the NFL and the week to come. All right, guys. Listen, we talked about just the divisions that are in flux. That doesn't even, count the AFC side of things as well. A lot of divisions that are still up for grab. It's still early. So, Chris, I want to ask you, there's a bunch of big matchups. We've got Dallas, San Francisco, Cincinnati, Philly this weekend. If there's a team that you think that's not number 1 in the division right now that can make a run, potentially win their division, they're still live, what team would you be targeting on before the weekend?
Well, I think the obvious choice is the Niners, but I actually think you may be better off waiting, because I like the Cowboys in this game. I just think they're catching the Niners at a bad time for the Niners, but then the Niners have a bye, and then I think they make a run. We've seen this in the past with Kyle Shanahan. He's had teams start 3-4, 3-5, end up right back in the NFC Championship game. They'll get healthier. Ayuk is a big loss, but they did draft a kid in the first round. He'll get up to speed eventually. Purdy's still a very good quarterback. So I think the Niners are the obvious choice, but you might want to either split a unit, between some before and some after in case Dallas gets it done, or just wait. So, but I like San Francisco.
Yes, Raybon giving out Dallas on the 6-pack. You can obviously stay tuned and listen to that over on the Action Network YouTube channel. Liking Dallas's chances in this one. A lot of injuries in flux for San Francisco, a banged-up team. But we know Kyle Shanahan down the stretch always puts it together. Stuckey, what team in particular are you targeting on division side? You're going to the AFC.
Yeah, I'll throw out a couple. I mean, you asked Raybon, what team would you bet on to come back in the division? He picked the 49ers at their even money and the favorites. I feel like
they're plus 150.
This is a preview of your of Charlie's chalky wide receiver prop segment to come up. But I would look. I mean, I don't mind the Bengals. I think you can find 11, 12 to 1 out there. I'm a Ravens fan, and if I know one thing about the Ravens besides last year, that they're probably going to suffer more injuries down the stretch. But I think since he's primed to go on a run, I like them this week. I don't mind the Rams. You can find last night, they were, even after the game, you could find a plus 550 out there. I think you can still find 5 to 1. I don't mind that. The Rams are a different team with Kupp and Nakua. We saw that last night against the Vikings. They got their number 1 cornerback, so their defense should be a bit better, as it has been in the past 2 weeks, and still get pressure with their defensive line. So I don't mind. Really good head coach. They got and look, you have the Niners could lose this weekend. The Seahawks are underdogs. And the Rams are going to have extra prep for the Seahawks next. So Rams, I think, are in a pretty good spot here now that they got their receivers back. Completely different team. What can they do now? They can score in the red zone. Couldn't do that before. You got Kupp and Nakua. You can do that now. So from a longer shot perspective, Bengals and Rams I'd look at.
Yeah, the Bengals seem like a team that you could potentially buy on in long-term future markets too, Super Bowl, what have you. It seems like they're a much better team and that they're figuring things out. I know more to come on your best bet with the Bengals-Eagles game in just a bit, but you mentioned it. the Bengals are a perfect segue into Shark Tank, so we have to look, guys, what happened previously on Shark Tank. I could throw the ball off the backboard to myself and slam it through again for the 6th straight time. I mean, I don't know what else I have to do to get you guys on board every single week. I think I've earned the opportunity, at least as a potential founder that you guys can invest in, that I have the pedigree and the success and the resume thus far. But I guess I'll have to table it to next week, win another one.
8-0. If you get the 8-0, I'll become interested.
I try to give you the best play of the week, and I work my butt off, and so far so good, because 7-0. Chris, you've invested me 3 times. I haven't let you down yet, so I'm going to not let you down once again. And Stuckey, you said I had to go 8-0 before you invest with me, or at least consider it on a prop. You started pulling back your words. 2 weeks ago you said I'd invest with you. Last week you're like, well, I'll consider investing with you if you go 8-0. Well, my favorite player prop of this one is an over. Go figure. A wide receiver. Go figure. Amon-Ra St. Brown, over 72.5 receiving yards. The sun god here. Listen, it's Jared Goff in a dome.
No thanks. By the way, road favorites over the past 3 weeks, road favorites in the NFL are 13-0. It's like fluky stuff happens. If you can get to 14-0, I will start to consider.
No, you ate 14, you said? You said 8-0. So if I win this week, that
means change. Things change in the business world, Charlie. Things change.
A verbal agreement, I think
I would consider 8-0. But now I will really consider 14-0. And by the way, I'm on this too. So if the Jets win and the Mets win the World Series and you get to 14-0,
you can't keep adding more guarantees to the list here, Stuckey. That's Well, 8-0. Stuckey, you gave me this challenge back in, I think it was week 5. You said, get to 8-0. I'll start considering. I've done the track record. I've proven the pedigree of being a successful business owner and entrepreneur, and I have another one for both of you today. I went Amon-Ra last week, his over 72.5 receiving yards. He put up 115. Well, how about Jamar Chase is down there somewhere. His over 75.5 receiving yards. Listen, guys, it's another wide receiver over, but it's what's working right now. I've done this, each of the last 8 weeks, and every single time it's come to the bank, and now we get an Eagles team to take advantage of. They're dead last in DVOA to the wide receiver 1 position. And Cincinnati passes on 60% of its plays. It's a pass-heavy offense for a wide receiver that honestly hasn't been targeted as much. And I think that, looking last year to this year, should see an increase in targets. 3 targets less per game this season. I think that's going to come against a Philly defense that is absolutely atrocious in the secondary. A buy low spot for Mr. Jamar Chase after going under in each of his last 2. But we had an ugly game against a division rival in Cleveland. And then we had the New York Giants, 2 games where the Bengals were not forced to drop back and pass a lot. You look before that, Jamar Chase was on fire. So I expect, guys, Jamar Chase to put up a big 100-burger in this one. I'm happy to take the 75.5 receiving yards. 8-0. Chris, you rode with me for a 2nd straight week. Your pockets are getting too fat, so why don't you donate some more to me? I'll get you some more. We'll get you a dump truck or something like that to then bring in the next load of money. Sharps, Stuckey, 8-0. What do you say?
Listen, I also said the Mets have to win the World Series, which didn't happen. And then I would definitely invest in you. The team of destiny. I've never seen a team of destiny not even make the World Series, by the way. But a little birdie told me that you talk about your process, that your process is just texting the odds maker, or should I call him the evens maker now, Sean Kerner, for these wide receiver over props. So I could just do that earlier in the week. I'm already invested in this. I already like the Bengals. This is not a passion project of mine. I don't know how many times I got to tell you. So I did consider it. I thought about it, and then I said, no, I'm out. No thanks.
I don't know who your sources are and who these little birdies that are chirping lies into your ears, because first off, if I was going to give out an over, that's not coming from Sean Kerner. He's giving out unders. And if I was going to give out a chalky over, it's sure as hell not coming from Sean Kerner. Listen, Stuck.
I also like to invest in even-keeled, level-headed investors and people that are going to run my props. I mean, your response right there was
I'm
little
defending
too
myself
because
I have
emotional.
I have the pedigree.
So
I've won.
For those reasons,
I'm a winner.
For those reasons, I'm out.
I can't. You know what? You're a man of your word, Stuck. That's what I thought you were. You said 8-0.
I considered it. I considered it. By the way, Kerner last night had an over pace. I have
defensive
tackles, so don't say he doesn't have overs.
Defensive props,
and listen, I said I'd consider it. I already have an investment on the Bengals, so I hope Chase has a great day. You don't need me to invest to continue your success. I did consider it. This seems too high for me. I mean, Burrow can spread the ball around to a lot of different guys here. I considered it. I'll give you a promise. I'll consider it again next week.
You'll consider it again next week. 4 weeks ago you said 8-0.
Come with the
side.
Maybe come with an under. But look, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I don't need the jinx the streak.
Fine. They listen. I can't do unders. That's when, if I'm giving out unders, that's when you know I'm talking to Sean Kerner, Nick Gifford, or someone else. Chris Raybon, I'll move to you. All right, my friend. We've done it how many times together? We have been true business partners through and through, successful ones. Stuckey just hates, I guess, successful, good-looking entrepreneurs like myself. So what do you say, Ja'Marr Chase over 75.5 receiving yards?
So you did mention that he had a couple of slow games. He went 72 and 55 the last two against the Giants and the Cleveland Browns. And a big reason why, I think, is those teams didn't score much. The Giants only scored 7 points. The Cleveland Browns scored only 14. But remember, the Eagles, they don't have Jordan Mailata. Looks like they're going to be without Dallas Goedert. I don't know if this Eagle team is going to put up a big number and make the Bengals pass it around all day. And T. Higgins did sustain an injury in practice. He's questionable. And that's a big deal now because Ja'Marr Chase is at a career low 18% target per route rate. T. Higgins well over in the mid-20s. So, T. Higgins is he's been their number one receiver this year when he's been on the field with Chase. And I need to know more about his playing status before I commit to that. I think if we knew T. Higgins were out, then I think this is a good bet. But I thought the Eagles were going to get better as the season progressed on defense. Vic Fangio takes a while to learn the scheme now. It's hard to judge the Giants and Browns coming off the bye, but the Eagles haven't really allowed anything through the air these last 2 weeks. So for those reasons, I'm out.
They call him Big Play Slay because he allows big plays, Raybon. This is a guy that Ja'Marr Chase, we saw last night, they scheme up plays to get Justin Jefferson the ball. Ja'Marr Chase is going to be the same way. I can't believe, even if T. Higgins plays, I think that should help Ja'Marr Chase in the end run. And plus, we saw A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, it wasn't Devontae Smith, but the other two, they put up big numbers against the Giants. I think this offense I think it's going to be a higher scoring game in particular, but I guess I have to go back to the drawing board. But listen, Raybon, I'm not going to be upset with you. I'm more upset with Stuckey because you've invested with me in the past. You give me the time of day. I didn't even have my pick in, and Stuckey was already passing. So we'll move on from there with Ja'Marr Chase over 75.5. And when I get to 9-0,
I considered what you were going to consider. I will say that. And by the way, I on our Sunday six pack, I like the Bengals, and I was just talking about some bad injury luck, and I saw T. Higgins pop up. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But yeah. So I would assume he's out if I were you, which probably could help you, Charlie. But Orlando Brown, it looks like we'll start, which is big.
Yeah,
because
that is
the
big.
whole offensive line could have fallen apart like last week with the Giants against the Eagles.
Well, you're not going to back me on Ja'Marr Chase, which is unfortunate. But we are still Stuckey. It feels like every week, every other week, we're kind of rooting for the same thing, and that's success on the Bengals offensive end. You kind of hinted at it earlier. A best bet before the weekend, Cincinnati -2.5, 1.5, I believe is out there. You like the Bengals still, even with these injuries popping up?
I mean, it's just T. Higgins. I mean, it happened, I don't know, an hour ago. So the other bets I like are Raybon has one. I like the Dolphins, but that's up to 5 now. I like the Jags, but that's down to 3.5. I like the the Raiders, but that's down to 9.5. So the only thing that's left is the Bengals. Yeah, I still like them under 3. Give me Burrow just to win against a good team that I think the Bengals are better at home. Burrow shows up in these games. Should have beat the Ravens. Zach Taylor had a brain. Should have beat the Chiefs if they don't get that PI call or the defensive score that the Chiefs had late. He shows up in these games. He's 16-7 against the spread against teams that are over 500. I'm not a buyer in this Eagles offense right now. I'm still not a believer in their defense, which I think has been helped by their schedule. And I just trust Burrow at home. Yeah, hopefully Higgins plays. Orlando Brown was the key piece that I was watching because if you had Cody Ford in there at left tackle, it could have been a disaster, but he will start. So, I mean, like, look, even without T. Higgins, the Bengals should have beat the Chiefs earlier this season, the healthier Chiefs team. So this is a much more important game for the Bengals. I think they get it done at home. Anything under 3 is fine.
Hopefully a big day is in store for Jamar Chase. I will say, looking at my bet, looking at your bet, I must say I think mine looks a little bit more appealing. So for those reasons, I'm out on your best bet. But Chris Raybon, your best bet of the week is Jameis Winston and the Cleveland Browns against Stuckey's Baltimore Ravens. Tell me why you like the Browns as dogs here.
So, first of all, the Browns are at home. It's a divisional game. Those are always tight. It's not a huge total either. It's, I think, 44, 43.5. So, just fundamentally, this is a good spot to back the dog. But when I look at this Cleveland team, I think what you're going to get this week is the closest that the Browns have come to replicating, what they had down the stretch and into the playoffs last year. You are getting healthier on the offensive line. You're replacing a quarterback in Deshaun Watson, who is historically bad, with Jameis Winston, who 16th in EPA per dropback since 2021. Watson was bottom 3. So you're getting a quarterback, a better quarterback, just a functional quarterback, better protection. Run game should be better with Chubb. You're going to need some of that physicality against the Ravens, who play really good run defense. And Marlon Humphrey, look, he's banged up. I know Zay Flowers returned to practice, but Baltimore's not exactly in peak health. They're coming off.
Humphrey's out. He'll be out.
Okay, yeah. So he's out. I think Cleveland's offense is going to be able to function here, and that hasn't been the case for most of really all of the year. And anytime they had Watson, then they went to DTR, who's worse than Watson, if you can believe that. So I think this is a good spot for the Browns. Their defense has all the same pieces for the most part. That was the top 2 defense last year. They got both of their safeties back, played together, Delpit and Thornhill for the first time since week 2 when they held the Jags to 13 points. So I like this spot. And then you got Lamar. Anytime he's favored over a field goal, he's covering just 42% of the time. Anytime he's favored by more than 5, that drops to just 39% against the spread in his career. So just a lot of reasons to like Cleveland. This is a really big number divisional matchup for them to be at home. So I like it over a possession.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does feel like a really large number for someone like Jameis Winston, who isn't half bad, versus Deshaun Watson. You couldn't convince me to get behind it with Deshaun under center, but Jameis Winston finally getting a chance to start for the Cleveland Browns does feel like a tad too high. Plus, everybody just saw Lamar put up 5 touchdowns on national TV, so the public all in, as you can see, on the Baltimore Ravens. All right, Stuckey.
Charlie, it's also short week, second straight road game. Not an easy spot for the Ravens. And with Zay Flowers returning to practice, I assume you like Zay Flowers over receiving yards?
No. I do not want Zay Flowers over here. There's no need to keep backing up Chris Raybon and trying to help his bets and not hyping up me, who has been 8-0, trying to get you money in your pockets, Stuckey. We're done with this.
He's sakes. What do you mean? Yeah, see, this is why your process is flawed, because you just like to spew.
You guys made fun of me earlier by saying that I was immune. I said I was immune to regression as a joke. You said that's why you're out. I haven't lost since.
And now you're reacting. You're hostily reacting. Like Stuckey said, you can't keep an even keel, bro.
Hype up your friends.
When it comes to
everybody love everybody. Everybody.
Too emotional.
Everybody.
Also, no humility, talking about how good looking he is. And
Pittsburgh Steelers, and they started 11-0. You remember that?
Everybody love
2020 Steelers.
Everybody, guys.
The corpse of Ben Roethlisberger. That's you.
2020
Stop.
Steelers.
Everybody love everybody, all right? Get out of here, please. Get out. Stuckey Chris Raybon, thank you for having on. If you want access to all of our Action Pro projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes exclusive player pop picks from Sean Kerner and other members of the Action Analytics team. You'll also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread, money line, and total bets, and real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today and use code GDD20 at sign up. One more time, that's code GDD20 at sign up for $20 off. And on to the Diamond. Game 1 of the World Series begins tonight, and here's how the pitching matchup shakes out. The New York Yankees will hand the ball to its ace, Garrett Cole, who is undefeated in the postseason with a 3.31 ERA. He hasn't been his dominant self with 25 base runners in 16 and a third innings, but it's been enough for the Bombers to win. As for Jack Flaherty, he's been tabbed as the starter for Game 1 of the Dodgers. His postseason success has been a roller coaster, throwing 7 shutout against the Mets before being absolutely battered the next time around. He has a 7.04 ERA as his velocity continues to drop late in the season. As we welcome in Sean Zerillo to talk more about the World Series that begins tonight. Sean, before we get into tonight's games, we have to talk the fun angles, the World Series futures, though, the big bang for our buck. We've had plenty of success in the past with some of these. I know a few years ago, all of us at Action cashed behind your Jorge Soler World Series MVP ticket. So I thought it'd be fun for us to kind of do a little draft in terms of just futures and stuff to sweat out throughout the entire series rather than a game-by-game perspective. It'll be a snake draft. You're up first, my friend, so start us off.
Yankees minus 1.5 games. I was on the show the other day. We were debating whether Jack Flaherty or Yamamoto would start in Game 1. I basically said if Flaherty started in Game 1, the correct score prop for Yankees 4-1 would be the way to go. But when I actually calculated out the edges for all of the correct score props, for all of the Yankees series spreads, there was a more significant edge on their series spreads than there were for the correct score props. So you can just bet Yankees minus 1.5 games. That encompasses Yankees 2-1 or Yankees 4-2, and it encompasses Yankees 4-1 in addition to the Yankees sweeping. So rather than taking that plus 550 or plus 600 on the Yankees to win the series 4-1 and beating Flaherty twice, we're just going to lay the 1.5 games and take the Yankees to win at 6 or less. Plus 195, best available number I saw out there. Comfortable betting that down to about plus 185. I made that closer to plus 180. And then if you just want to go even more simple, take the Yankees series money line at minus 1 and 2 or better.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I think the Yankees have the edge in this one just from a series perspective. Going with Jack Flaherty, definitely an interesting choice nonetheless, but just for rest purposes with Yamamoto. More on Jack Flaherty in just a bit. My first pick, right? I don't think the Yankees are going to I think the Yankees are going to win the World Series, but I do think that my favorite future is Teoscar Hernandez to win the World Series MVP at 28-1, mostly because everyone's betting on Judge, Soto, Stanton, Betts, Ohtani. Well, how about Teoscar Hernandez, who will be in the middle of the lineup that is the boom or bust type player that fits the profile of a potential World Series MVP? He's going to be up in big moments, plenty of RBI opportunity given the profile of who's hitting in front of him. That is, Ohtani and Betts. They probably pitch around one of them to face Teoscar, who then will have the opportunity to make the big hits in the big moments. We saw against the Padres, him and Kike were the two that had the home runs in that do or die game. I just think this number is a little bit too far for a guy that, if the Dodgers are going to win the World Series, I'm assuming it's behind their offensive firepower. Hernandez, I think, has more value when you look at the rest of the board. Muncy down at 15-1, Ohtani, what have you, down below that, 8-1, 7-1 number. So going with Teoscar, even though I think the Yankees probably win the World Series, if the Dodgers win, I definitely want to be holding a Teoscar World Series MVP ticket. All right, wrap around. Or I guess we'll just do a fixed snake order or draft order. You could go second here. We're all about fun on Action Network. So your second pick for the futures draft. Go ahead.
Yeah, just want to echo Teoscar. I bet that too. His RBI leader bet as well, 10-1. He leads the Dodgers in postseason plate appearances with runners in scoring position. He's, I believe, fourth on the team in actual RBI, but he's had the most opportunities. So yeah. Teoscar, RBI leader, he's going to have chances to put up stats in this series. Another guy who should have a chance to put up stats is Gleyber Torres, who projects to have the most plate appearances in this series because he hits lead off for the away team. If this series goes 7 games, Gleyber will have the most plate appearances of any player. And he also leads the Yankees in postseason hits. So I like Glaber for World Series MVP at 40-1, but I prefer his hits leader prop for the series at 17-1. He had a great September. He's carried it into October. He's hitting 324 since September 1st. So I think Glaber just in a groove right now. Maybe he can lead the series in hits. I like his odds relative to the field, though. I believe he was 8th or 9th, 8th to 10th on the odds board for hits leader. Considering he's going to be getting the most plate appearances, it seemed like a decent look.
Yeah, Gleyber Torres definitely, changing this New York Yankees offense by him getting on base. You have to pitch to Soto, you have to pitch to Judge. It's a lot more base runners on the path for the Yankees to cash in, and that kind of leads into my next pick, which is the long shot. I like Jazz Chisholm to win MVP. I got 66-1. There's a 50-1 out there. And we talked about this before you came on Tuesday when we were like, all right, we'll talk futures on Friday. I was like, Sean, am I crazy for thinking Jazz Chisholm has value at MVP this far down? Listen, the Yankees, they're going to be on base. We know that. We talked about Glaber's success. They're Judge, Soto, those guys are on base machines. The Yankees' big lineup change, series over series was that they moved Wells down. He's been slumping. He's no longer batting cleanup. Stanton playing a lot better, should move up. The other guy that's moving up is Jazz Chisholm. So I think when it comes to just opportunities and you're looking, and that's how you're looking at this, from a futures perspective, who's going to be up with big opportunities? I think teams are going to opt to face the likes of Jazz Chisholm rather than, Judge, Stanton, Soto, and what have you. So I think the RBI opportunities and the big moments will be there for Jazz. Whether or not he cashes in remains to be seen. Plus, kind of a picture-perfect way to wrap up the little trade for Jazz. Ends up giving them that World Series trophy. So that's my second pick here. Your next pick kind of agrees with me in a sense of the base runners on the path for the Yankees with Jazz Chisholm. So go ahead, take us home with your final pick here.
Yeah, I also bet Jazz is for MVP, and I like him for RBI leader in the series at 15-1. He should be, as you mentioned, hitting higher in the Yankees order than he was earlier in the postseason. He was batting 6th for the majority of the ALDS and ALCS, but he moved up to 4th and 5th over the final 3 games of the ALCS. He's 3rd on the Yankees in postseason plate appearances with runners in scoring position. The 2 guys ahead of him are Austin Wells, who now move lower in the lineup in favor of Jazz, and Giancarlo Stanton. So Jazz should have, as you said, plenty of opportunity to cash in runners throughout the series. He's also going to be getting exclusively right-handed opponents. Should be batting 4th or 5th in every game because the Dodgers only throw right-handed starters. Sure, they can play matchups with their lefties against him, but also Jazz splitting up the Yankees' right-handed hitters, inserting him between Stanton and Wells or between Stanton and another righty just breaks up the Yankees' batting order. So, yeah, I think Jazz should have plenty of opportunity. Like seeing him move up in the order. Also, guy from the Bahamas, played most of his career in Miami. Maybe these first 2 games in L.A., final 2 games of the series in LA, warmer temperatures. Maybe Jazz warms up a little bit with the weather too.
Yeah, I totally think that this is a great chance for him to get right after some struggles that happened early on in the postseason. My last pick, I'm going to target Shohei Ohtani here, and not in the market you may think. I like him to be the stolen base leader in this series. It's chalky, it's plus 165, but when I look at who is going to be on base the most, it's probably going to be Shohei Ohtani. I looked back at just this pure amount of times Ohtani got on base this postseason, 2+ times in a game in over 50% of postseason games. He's on base all the time. Teams obviously don't pitch to him that closely. He has the stolen base pedigree. He stole nearly 60 bases last season, or this in the regular season. Doesn't have one yet. I think this is a good spot. Listen, Wells is above average as far as, framing and all of that. But then when you look at him actually catching runners, stealing, he's right about league average. Guys like Garrett Cole is the name that I think of mostly. -5 per Baseball Savant's catcher, pitcher, runner leaderboard. I don't know the official stat by it. I'm twisting my tongue a bit, but I don't mind him at 13-1 to lead the entire postseason in stolen bases too. He's 3 behind Tommy Edman. Edman, is definitely the favorite for a reason. But Ohtani, I could easily see coming out here, stealing 2 or 3 bases, in multiple moments, having his kind of MVP moment. So I like him at plus 165 here. Think just from a pure at-bats and plate appearance perspective, he's not only going to be, first or second, but he'll be also on base, arguably the most because of the walks that pitchers often pitch around him. So quick recap of our 3 picks a pop. I went back-to-back MVPs with my first 2 picks. Went with Teoscar Hernandez, 28-1, World Series MVP. Jazz Chisholm, 50-1 on the Yankees side of things. And then an Ohtani stolen base leader. Sean Zerillo going with Glaber to lead the postseason, or the World Series rather, in hits at 17-1. Yankees minus 1.5 at near 2-1, and then rounding us out with a Jazz Chisholm RBI leader. All right, Sean, it's time to talk about tonight's game. I mentioned it at the top of the show. Garrett Cole against Jack Flaherty. We've talked plenty of times about Flaherty and the struggles that, might be going on with his velocity. We know the Yankees didn't trade for him for a reason, because their medicals were a bit shaky. So we're going to start a pitch clock like we did on Tuesday. You got 30 seconds for each pick. The first one I throw out for you, Jack Flaherty, over, under 4.5 strikeouts. Ready? Go.
Under 4.5 strikeouts at plus money. Prefer that to the under 14.5 outs at plus money, just because the Dodgers don't want to exhaust their bullpen in this series. Also, second time through the order, you may see that velo dip for Flaherty. It was at a 7-year low his final 2 regular season starts. It got back to that level in his final NLCS start. So live unders on Flaherty, second time through the order, live under 15.5 outs.
22 seconds. We are in mid-season form on that one. The next one up, gotta go Garrett Cole, starting on the mound for the Yankees. I mentioned it. There's been a lot of base runners for Garrett Cole. He hasn't been, amazing, but he's been able to do the job for the Yankees. His outs right now, over under 15.5, slightly juiced to the under. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, the juice has actually gone up, and I think now I might even prefer under 4.5 strikeouts at plus money to the under 15.5 outs at minus 180 or so. But both pitchers, or all pitchers, are going to have difficult being efficient in this series. These teams both rank in the top 5 in pitches seen per plate appearance. They were top 2 in walk to strikeout ratio, and the walk to strikeout ratio for both offenses has actually gone up in the playoffs. So could see a lot of pitches, could see a lot of walks, don't see a lot of efficient pitching. Cole under 15.5 at the key number, or under 4.5 Ks at plus money.
29.8 seconds on that one, just at the buzzer for Garrett Cole. That's because you had to throw in the under 4.5 strikeouts. Would have been about 22 probably, if not. The next one, we talked about him as well on Tuesday. Freddie Freeman is playing, presumably, through an ankle injury. How are you betting Freddie Freeman?
Yeah, whenever I stop talking is how long it's going to take Freddie to go from home to first in this series. He has had some extra time to rest up that ankle, but if you look through his postseason game logs, he's only cleared 1.5 total bases in 2 of the 8 games. He sat multiple times. He got that extra rest, as I said, for the World Series. Probably feeling a little better, but this is not a guy who's going to leg out any doubles. He's going to need 2 hits, very likely, in order to beat you, unless he puts a ball super deep into the corner. So Freeman under 1.5 total bases. I would lay that up to about minus 250 tonight, and we'll see how healthy he looks tonight and for the remainder of the series.
31.8, Sean. You started out so strong. It's that little joke you made at the top of the show, which was a banger, so I'll let it slide on Freddie Freeman unable. Because, if we factor in how long it'll take him to get a double, it's probably like 33 seconds. So we'll let that one slide. All right, so the other, let's shift gears a little bit now, because obviously you cover baseball. Obviously it's the World Series, but it's also UFC 308. We have a big card, this weekend on Saturday. So you always break down the UFC in addition to the work you do for Major League Baseball over at Action Network. Let's start with we'll end with Holloway against Topuria. Let's start with Armen Petrosyan against Shara Magomedov. Learning how to pronounce all these names here. How do you see this one playing out with Armen as the slight dog?
Yeah, I make Petrosyan about a plus 122 underdog. I think this fight is a very close kickboxer versus kickboxer matchup where Petrosyan has the better hands, maybe the better cardio as well. Shara might be a bit more durable, but typically Armen Petrosyan gets matched up against grapplers. He's forced to counter grapple and then outstrikes them from there. When he's had the grappling upside in his matchup, he's actually pursued it and attempted to take his opponents down. So typically, as Billy Ward and I typically discuss on our UFC betting pods, we take fighters who have all of the grappling upside at plus money. I think in a pure striking fight, this is a coin flip, and I would be happy to take Petrosyan at plus money. I'm even happier to grab it, considering this is MMA, and he's allowed to grapple too, and he may mix in some takedowns. So consensus underdog from both myself and Billy Ward on Armen Petrosyan this weekend. I think Shara Magomedov is a flawed fighter getting a lot of hype, and I think this is a guy to take him out. Yeah,
Magomedov also with one eye. So if you're not accustomed to watching UFC, you better check that out, because looking him up on Google search, it might be a little bit of a pop-up scare. The other one Ilya Topuria against Max Holloway. This is the main event matchup of UFC 308. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, and just as a reminder, the prelims for this card start at 10 a.m. The main card starts at 2 p.m. So this main event is probably going to be at 4 p.m. in the middle of your football Saturday. So make sure to get those bets in early. You're not going to be able to bet this one and enjoy it at 11 p.m. But in terms of this matchup and betting it, I was surprised to find the odds plus money to the goes to decision. I intended to bet Topuria to win inside the distance, but his odds to win this fight inside the distance are about plus 110. That's roughly half of what they were against Alexander Volkanovski. So I have to go against the price adjustment. Holloway coming off of his first career knockdown against Justin Gaethje. I think there's a chance that his chin is maybe starting to crack, but otherwise, these two guys are extremely durable for the division. This division has a 54% decision rate on average, and they're giving you about plus 130 for the fight to go to a decision. I actually prefer the over 3.5 rounds or the over 4.5 rounds. I laid over 3.5 at minus 118. You can get over 4.5 at plus money. Max Holloway, very willing to stand in the center of the cage and bang it out until the final second. He's going to push on the gas pedal very aggressively in the 5th round. He's been in the 5th round in 10 of his past 11 fights. Topuria's only been to a 5th round once in his career. So a little bit worried about a very late finish here for Holloway as he did against Gaethje. That's why I would just take the over 4.5 at plus money or lay the juice on the over 3.5 rather than getting a little bit greedier with the plus 130 on the goes to decision.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember you mentioned it. You're like, oh, Holloway's happy to stand in the middle of the ring and literally swing it out until the end. That's exactly what happened with Gaethje the last time they fought with the knockout. Probably the coolest moment that I've seen in UFC in recent history. Just, absolutely calling him center stage with the win already under his way, just to knock him out one last time. But a couple of must-watch fights on your mid-afternoon for Saturday. Take a break from some college football to enjoy some UFC. Sean Zerillo, also with some World Series going on too on Saturday. Enjoy a busy weekend, my friend, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Charlie, thank you for having me. Best of luck this weekend, and we'll see you soon.
On to college football, and there's a season-high 5 ranked matchup setting the stage for a highly entertaining college football Saturday. Navy looks to keep its CFP hopes alive at MetLife Stadium at noon as the Midshipmen take on Notre Dame as 13.5-point dogs. 4 of those 5 matchups you can see have spreads of 13 or more. The lone coin flip being LSU and Texas A&M. The Tigers have won 6 straight after dropping its season opener against USC, as did the Aggies, who lost to Notre Dame to begin its season. A loss could mean the end of the CFP dream for both these teams, as we welcome in Mike Calabrese to talk more about the college football week ahead. We'll get to LSU A&M in just a second, Calabrese, but I want to talk about the SEC playoff picture in particular. It feels like Georgia, Texas are shoo-ins. The rest, kind of anything goes, like Tennessee beating Alabama, stock up Tennessee, Alabama, probably the outside looking in. We've got LSU, A&M, Ole Miss. So I'm just curious your thoughts based on just looking at the rest of the season and how everything's shaping up, what you expect out of this conference in the CFP race down the stretch.
Well, for starters, the general sentiment is that the SEC is trying to take over the world. They're trying to manipulate the college football playoff after 2026 and make sure that they have 4 and 5 auto bids. And it's a foregone conclusion that they're just going to send a clown car of teams every year. But you mentioned it. As you look at it, Georgia, Texas, yeah, I think they're locks at this point. But then there's a very fluid situation after that. And I think if you were to put an over-under on teams to make it into the field, you'd probably put it at 3.5. I feel pretty good about 3 getting in there. But there are scenarios where the Big 12 and the ACC start to handle their business down the stretch and put multiple teams in, either undefeated or with 1 loss. And when that starts to happen and those situations start to stack on themselves, you're going to have some SEC teams that had national title aspirations on the outside looking in. The Athletic predicts 3 teams from the SEC to make the field. And what's interesting is they get down to the nitty-gritty of the probability of them making it. Like Mizzou, for instance, they have them listed with a 17% chance, but they're priced out in the market right now to make the college football playoff at 4-1. So their implied probability is a little bit higher. Teams like Ole Miss, according to The Athletic, 11% chance to make it, but they're priced at plus 190, which has a much higher implied probability at nearly 35%. So these teams, you can make the argument that they have opportunities with marquee games still on the schedule to get that resume padding win. But the problem is if you're entering already with 1 or 2 losses, there's no room for error at this point in the season. And I still think there's human nature when it comes to the committee in terms of comparing Power 4 teams versus Power 4 teams. If one has 2 and 3 losses compared to one, I think they're going to go with the team with the 1 loss and try to be a little bit more diplomatic in how they fill up this field.
That's interesting because, obviously we talked, I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago before Tennessee and Alabama played, and we were like, what number is it of an SEC team loss-wise? Do you just completely chalk it up and be like, it's not happening? And I think 3 is that number where if you have 3 losses, you could probably kiss those dreams goodbye. 2, you're still in the thick of things. So it's really interesting to look at it because then you mentioned it. Clemson, Miami out of the ACC, are those 2 teams that can steal one? So you think in particular that, even though the SEC is kind of the king of the kings in college football, that even with 2 losses that they might even lose out to say, if Clemson wins the ACC and Miami has 1 loss being that AFC championship or the ACC championship, same goes in the Big Ten, et cetera, with Penn State and Ohio State, Oregon, all of them also vying for a spot.
Yeah, this has just been a weird year. You have all these teams kind of laying in wait, SMU and Pitt and Iowa State and BYU. I think they're going to take advantage of a little bit of a softer schedule, easier conference slates down the stretch to be able to finish or at least get to the title game with 1 loss or be undefeated in that spot. What's interesting is if we went back in a time machine and I was able to tell you in August, Vandy is probably in the best position to make the college football playoff with 3 losses. Because when you look at where they're at right now, if they finish 9-3, hypothetically with a win over number 1 Alabama at the time, and they go 2 out of 3 against Texas, LSU, and Tennessee, I don't think you can keep Diego Pavia and this Commodore team out of the field. So that's what's so interesting about this season. Everything is a unique experience, and it's really a fool's errand to try to predict, 6-7 weeks out. Even where we are right now, there's so much chaos that potentially could unfold, and we could even see 2 G5 teams make the field if more chaos plays out in the coming weeks.
Right. There's so much that's left to be had in college football season. We're still not even close to the end. And you mentioned, listen, Florida State was undefeated last season, didn't make the last 4. Now, obviously, we have an expanded profile. The ACC winner's an automatic bid. So, but it's completely new, as you mentioned it. So it's so interesting to see how the CFP committee in general is going to weigh out all these things. But another game that we kind of mentioned at the top that takes place this weekend that really has a lot of CFP kind of hopes on the line. The dreams kind of fade with the loss, I think, here for either team, and that's LSU A&M. A&M's a slight favorite in this one, about a point. We mentioned it off they're playoff odds to make the CFP. LSU minus 115, A&M plus 110. It feels like the winner, as I keep mentioning, is probably alive in the CFP race. We'll see how that goes, but the loser is out. How do you see this one playing out in particular?
I think both of these offenses have high upside. I know that when you look at their overall defensive profiles, underplay may rise to the top, but 53.5 I don't think is enough points in this one. And it's really, for starters, let's go with the Bayou Bengals. The LSU offense at this point in the season has it all. And I think what we need to do is remove ourselves from that opening season loss to USC. I think that threw cold water on the season for Brian Kelly. But as we know, Brian Kelly has struggled in season openers all the way back to his Notre Dame days. So the fact that they came out slow out of the gates isn't something that should be really considered here in late October. They're 15th in pass protection. They're giving Nussmeier time to operate from the pocket. They now have a freshman All-American candidate at running back. He could be the SEC Freshman of the Year, join the ranks of Quinshaw Junkins and Marcus Lattimore and these other backs that came from the high school ranks and immediately had a massive impact. In Duncanville High School in Texas, not only was he an all-state running back, but he was a fixture on their track and field team. He could have enrolled early in Baton Rouge, but instead he decided to honor his commitment and come back so they could win a state title in multiple events in track and field. So he's someone who's popping the big play for them in the run game. They have 4 capable pass catchers as well. And all of that is translated to the game getting easier for Nussmeier. He's up to 12th in QBR, and he can really be trusted in clutch moments, as we've seen in the past month. And when you turn to the Aggie side of it, it takes 2 to tango for an over here. Can the Aggies put points on the board? I think they can, because their running game has continued to progress throughout the season. They're 12th in both rush rate and overall rushing yards per game. And LSU has a decent run defense, but when you look at the comps, when they played South Carolina, when they play Ole Miss, it was clear that you can move the defenders in the box against LSU. I think that there's an opportunity for A&M to run for over 200 yards in this game, so I want to be holding an over ticket.
Talking to Mike Calabrese, who will be on BBOC tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, breaking down the rest of Saturday's college football slate. You mentioned it. Also with this one, we keep talking about the CFP. The LSU schedule, it feels like it might cannibalize itself to A&M, Alabama, and then you mentioned Vanderbilt also on the horizon for the Tigers. So getting a win, at least putting up some points in this one after losing its season opener, feels like a necessity. Let's talk about Friday tonight. And I think this is, arguably one of the most watched games of the day and one of the most entertaining of the entire week, rather. Like Boise State, they're favored by 3.5 points against UNLV. It feels like one of these two teams probably has the driver's seat to the CFP as the group of five if they are able to win. Definitely Boise State in particular behind Ashton Genty. You like the UNLV Rebels as slight dogs, which I think is super interesting. So please tell me more about this one.
The wrong team's favored here. The best player on the field is Ashton Genty by a country mile. His elusive grade is over 300 per PFF. That's never happened dating all the way back to 2008 in terms of players that they've tracked. He's on the Barry Sanders level. And he's going to get 250 total yards in this game and multiple touchdowns. But football is a team game, and I have the home team on homecoming with the better quarterback and the better skill position talent outside of the running back position. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice with the running Rebs because I think there's an opportunity for them to take away Boise's second most impressive element of their team beyond Genty, which is the pass rush. They average nearly 5 sacks per game, which is tops in the entire country. But UNLV has a phenomenal offensive line, especially by G5 standards. Tiger Shanks at right tackle is an absolute road grader. He's going to hear his name in the second or third round of the NFL draft. And the entire line is experienced, and I think they're going to be able to keep Haj Malik Williams upright. And if he can stay in the pocket or extend plays with his legs and look downfield, that's how you take advantage of this Boise defense. They're 95th in plays of 30-plus yards from scrimmage allowed. And when it comes down to third and manageables, you can always pick apart Boise because no longer can they just blitz and play cover one behind it. They're 117th in third down defense. What that says to me is prolonged drives for UNLV. They're going to be able to keep up the scoring pressure. And then finally, when you look at how a game that's tight can swing, special teams come into play. They have a freshman All-American kicker who's 17 for 19 on the season, 4 for 5 from 40 yards or further. And the biggest wild card in this game, Ricky White III. Yes, he's an All-American talent at wide receiver, but he is the Las Vegas Beamer ball boy because they put him on special teams. He's blocked 3 punts and returned 1 for a touchdown. If he blocks one in this game, I think Boise's behind the 8 ball. Give me UNLV plus nearly 150.
Yeah, everyone talks about Ashton Genty, but also remember the name Ricky White III because he's been incredible for the Rebs this season. And unfortunate they fell to Syracuse because battle for first place in the Mountain West. They win this one. They're probably, I still think they're probably in the driver's seat for the CFP, but it'll definitely be interesting to see how the committee weighs all these ones down the stretch. But UNLV hoping for an upset win against Boise State, the public pouring in on the Broncos. Mike Calabrese, you can hear him over on the BBOC YouTube channel for the G5 podcast. And of course, the live show tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Mike Calabrese, thanks for hopping on, my friend. Enjoy the weekend.
Appreciate it, Charlie.
And just a friendly reminder that every pick we discuss here on the show, it's all tracked over at the award-winning Action Network app under the handle @green.daily. We keep track so you don't have to. That's going to be all for Green.Daily on this Friday. Enjoy the weekend. I'll be back here Monday, 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel talking Giants Steelers. Monday Night Football. We'll head to the island as well. Enjoy the weekend once again, and I'll talk to you again on Monday.